Welcome to Transmission Incoming, your channel for Warhammer 40,000 news, views and reviews. Today we're going to take a look at the Necron Lychguard and Triarch Praetorians. Welcome to a 9th edition unit review. Do you remember these guys? No, don't think anyone does really. They were generally fairly absent from 8th edition and considered to be relatively poor value for your points, which is a real pity for these awesome collection of miniatures. So why are we going to take a look at the units today? Over the last day or so, an image has come out which appears to be the new format datasheet that comes in repackaged boxes for 9th edition. The datasheets format has changed somewhat. The usual text has been replaced by a set of symbols which are defined in the core edition rulebook that's available via the website. Inside this datasheet there's a couple of really interesting points. There's been a number of improvements to these units, and I'll just quickly cover off what those are. The first main one is that their attacks value has increased to 3. These are an elite close combat unit, and that's a really good buff. You can't deny that, it's well worthwhile. Some of the weapons have also received a buff. We've got the particle caster, which has increased to pistol 2 from 1. The more interesting one is the Rodded Covenant. Both its melee and its shooting damage value has increased to 2 from 1. So this is a much more powerful weapon. So this may well change how often we see these units on the tabletop. And so I've taken a vastly longer amount of time than I expected it to do a bit of math hammer. And let's take a look at that now. So here you can see the comparison of these weapons against some fairly standard targets. I've gone with a guard equivalent, a primary space marine since they're all the rage at the moment, and armoured vehicle, the equivalent of a Rhino, 10 wounds, toughness 7 and 3 up save. I've also taken the time to have a look at some of the common strategies that could be used by these units to see how it affects the stats that underlie it. Now this has been calculated as the number of kills per 100 points of the unit. A unit of 10 Triarch Praetorians will cost you about 230 points, and a unit of 10 Lychguard is nearer the 300 point mark. So these are quite expensive units. That's all really interesting. Let's talk about what this actually means. So, key points. Rod of the Covenant. With the 2 damage, it is fantastically good at taking out elite infantry with 2 wounds. The weapon's got a high strength, it's got a reasonable AP value and 2 damage. When you combine it up with strats such as the Judgment of the Triarch, so 1 CP strat, which grants you +1 to hit rolls, you're coming out at 6 kills per 100 points. Now with a full unit of 10, that's killing 12 Primaris Marines a turn on average. That's not bad at all. Look at the other option. The other weapon option is the Void Blade and Particle Caster. Now we're just looking at the melee stats here. So the Void Blade is only damage 1, and so it is infinitely better against 1 wound targets. Going up against a guard equivalent, you're looking at between 7 and nearly 10 kills per 100 points each turn. It fares much less well against elite infantry, and it barely scratches vehicles, so don't even try and get these things in combat with vehicles. On the other side, this box also builds Lychguard, and you've got the options of having a hyperphase sword with dispersion shield or a war scythe. Both of these are relatively good at killing guard. They're nowhere near as good as the Triarch Praetorians. I cannot say that word. They're nowhere near as good as the Triarch Praetorians, but they're reasonable. Up against tougher units and elite infantry, the hyperphase sword really falls quite short here, scoring you just shy of 2 killed models per 100 points. Lychguard with war scythe, on the other hand, score only just less well than the Rodded Covenant. So I think the war scythe here has got potential. And moving across to versus the armoured target, you can see that the war scythe, especially when combined with disruption fields, is killing 3/4 of a vehicle a turn. So a full unit of 10 of these, which is 300 points, will kill 1.5 rhinos every round on average. So which of these units are best, and what is the best weapon option? There's some things to bear in mind here. First of all, neither of these units will benefit from dynastic codes. Neither of them have the dynasty keyword. It also affects a number of the other buffs the army can get. which is rather unfortunate. Triach Praetorians on the upside, both the Rod of Covenant and the Particle Caster and Voidblade have a shooting attack. They're also rather quick with a 10-inch movement, which I've forgotten to put on this slide. So I think Triach Praetorians are probably the better unit if you're starting them on the table and want to jump around quickly. If you're going up against Horde opponents, the Voidblade is the best option. It just chews through them. And if you're going up against heavier infantry, I'd certainly look to arm your guys with a Rod of Covenant. Lychguard, on the other hand, whilst they have no dynastic codes, again, they are also rather slow with only a 5-inch movement. So when you arm these guys with a Hyperphase Sword and Dispersion Shield, you gain a 4+ invulnerable save. So you've got a unit here with 2 wounds each, a toughness of 5, a 3-up save and a 4-up invulnerable. It does make them rather tanky, and with their slow movement they may actually see combat, as they can shrug off a huge amount of damage. It's also worth noting that the Lychguard can act as bodyguard for friendly dynasty characters, taking mortal wounds on a 2-up and intercepting those hits. So it's quite useful to keep your buffing characters alive. If you're going to use Lychguard, if you're facing Horde armies, you want to go for the Hyperphase Sword and Dispersion Shield. I think if you're also going up against armies that have an awful lot of AP, Sword and Board may well be the way to go there. You're going to get less damage per hit, however you're going to be able to tank a lot of their weapons in combat. If you're going up against vehicles, the War Scythe will cut holes in them. I think your biggest problem here is getting them into combat. It's just, they're so slow. I think overall, my favourite option is probably the Rod of Covenant. There's a lot of Space Marine armies out there, and I think that the 2 damage in both shooting and in combat is a really good boost there. If you want a tanky unit to camp on objectives, it's Sword and Board. Boosting the save, if you can get them into cover with the +1 save, you're going to boost them up to a 2-up save with a 4-up invuln, 2 wounds apiece. I think you have a unit that's going to be very, very difficult to shift. So, what do you think? Are these guys going to feature in your Necron army in this edition? Or are they going to remain on the shelf? Make some comments below and we'll have a chat. See you later. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel via the icon below to see all our future content. See you next time.